All right, welcome to all of you VIPs. This is a special stream that I want to do just for you guys, which is a look at one of the things that a lot of people have questions about, which is the difference or which is better between critical damage and the offense set. And so what you can see is, I know a small roast taco, don't worry, I'm going to make it larger. What you should be able to see, though, are some of the key numbers that I have kind of increased in size. And so let me increase these in particular because I want to make sure I highlight these numbers because these are the main ones we'll be looking at. And so the main ones we're looking at are going to be the offense percentage, the critical damage percentage, and you'll see I have a 1 and 2 because I have two different calculations, and I'll kind of go through what I put together here. And then the critical chance that shows what the difference is, which is at what point do you determine whether or not to use offense, and at which point do you determine to use critical damage. And so I'm going to start out fairly simple with one of the numbers that I'm sure you guys have seen before, which is that previously we used to have the number of 40%. And the reason you had the 40% was because offense set was 10% offense and critical damage was 30%. And you can see that, and I can switch this to a percentage so it's easier to see. The critical chance was 40%. That was kind of the key differentiating factor. What's happened since is that we've changed a lot of this around. Now, what I want to do is make sure that I also point out 40 was a very kind of generic number that we were using because it made it easy to kind of say 40%, there's your cutoff. It's actually a lot more complicated than that. And when I zoom in, you'll see why I'm saying it's more complicated than that. But when you look at here, now offense is 15%. And so if you look at just what it is, you'll see this 66.66 or 2/3 or however you want to look at it, right? And sometimes you see it rounded to 60%. But that's why you often see that 60% number. And it's because it's basically 67% now with the 15% offense versus the 30% crit damage set that you're getting this kind of number. But in reality, the crit chance has changed dramatically compared to what it used to be. And so by that, what I mean is we now also have the triangle, right? So let's now factor in the triangle. And actually, first, before we do that, let me zoom in and I will show you guys kind of all the different calculations that are going on here. So what I'm calculating is a formula on both sides. And on both sides of this, it's the same formula as how you calculate kind of your average damage. And what I'm doing in order to calculate your average damage, which is what you determine to see which one's going to get you the most damage kind of in the long run, is what your base offense is for your character, what your offense percentage is from your mods, what is your flat offense gain, what is your critical chance. Now, I have this blacked out because I'm actually calculating it for the purposes of here, and you'll see that I say assume crit chances are the same in this selected one here. But because I'm actually looking at that, I have this as kind of blacked out. But I could type in a category, I can type in a value here, and then have it calculate out in my formula. Because I kind of showed my work through all of this, and so we'll go through that. What your critical damage percentage is, and what your speed is. Now, why is speed important? So again, a lot of the calculations that you'll see being done overall is based on a generic, a lot of these values are the same type of mentality, which means that you can assume that the flat offense is going to be the same on different sets. You can assume that the speed is about the same on all these different sets because they add an additional variable that makes it sometimes difficult to determine which is the best versus which is the second best, that kind of stuff. And so what you'll see is kind of the base formula that I'm using in order to calculate. And so what you do first is you do your offense times what your overall gain in offense is. So you start out with 100%, obviously, and then you add whatever your offense percentage is, plus whatever your flat offense is. So that gives you an idea about what your overall flat offense is. Then you multiply it by 1 minus your crit chance, which is going to give you the percentage chance that you're not going to crit. So if you have a 33% crit chance, when you do this, you're going to have a 67% chance to not crit. And this first part calculates what your average damage is going to be on a non-crit. The next part is, again, kind of starting out the same, right? So you have your base offense plus your offense percentage plus your flat offense. So this gives you an idea about what your overall stats are going to be. Then you multiply it by your just crit chance. You're no longer doing the 100% minus. You're just looking at your crit chance. That'll give you what your overall chance of critting with your base damage is. But now, when you crit, you also add your critical damage. And so that's the next part, which is 150%, which is the normal gain on a crit, an additional 50%, plus whatever other crit damage you have. That all combined creates what your average damage is. When you add these two numbers together, which is the one without crit and the one with crit, you will get your average amount of damage. Now, where does speed come into play? You'll see speed here, I divide by 1,000. And the reason I divide by 1,000 is because a lot of the calculations done for the speed table is based on who gets to the number 1,000 a little bit quicker. And so it just makes it easier to compare. So if the speed is, let's say in this case, I have it set as 150. If your speed is 150, you're going to get about, in one cycle of what I will call like 1,000 speed units, you will get about 15% of your overall average damage. If you're considering both speeds are the same, both sides are getting multiplied by this, and then you can just remove it entirely. And so that's why it's often ignored, as long as it's the same. And you'll see that same calculation happens on this side, and it basically just cancels each other out in the long run. Now, I worked through the calculations, but it'll eventually it'll cancel itself out. And the rest of it is all pretty much the same. You'll see I'm using crit chance 2 instead. And so here I have it for a second set. So if you guys have, for example, a set that you want me to test out so you can see kind of what the damage difference is and which one is better, which one's worse, we can plug in those numbers here and do kind of a side-by-side comparison of two different sets. But what we're looking at now is these values I have set to just equal what's on the other side, because we want to assume that the base offense is the same. We want to assume that the flat offense is the same, and we want to assume that the base speed, or the speed, is the same, because that introduces another variable that can sometimes get things complicated, but we could easily change this here and the formulas would update. And so the rest of this is all just kind of showing my work. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so you can see maybe one side of the formula in its entirety. Let's see if we can get it. Okay, there we go. So you can see like the entire one side of the formula working all the way down, and I kind of show my work as I get all the way down to the point where you can now see how the damage is calculated just based on your critical chance. And once you figure out what your critical chance is, this will give you kind of your average damage over a 1,000 speed unit cycle. And again, it's not going to be, if you multiply all of this by 1,000 over 1,500, that'll give you what your damage is going to be on average per attack versus this, which includes speed as a calculation. So what I did afterwards, though, in this next part is assume that the crits were the same. So I made both crit chance 1 and crit chance 2 equal in terms of variables, and then just kind of did algebra and worked my way down to where it does a calculation. And so that's essentially what this spreadsheet that I put together to try and make sure that I went through all the calculations and reviewed all of that. That's what this eventually comes down to. And that's why when I zoom out, I try to zoom out so you can see the key kind of critical factors here, which are the offenses, the critical damages, and of course the final crit damage. So those are what I am looking at when we're looking at the comparisons. And by the way, if I lose anyone, if you guys have any questions along the way, please let me know. I'll definitely kind of slow down, go through any of these things that you want me to go through, and we can definitely go through all of that. So first, let's play around with some of these calculations. And so we have right now just simply put the base stats, right? So we have the 15% for the offense set, and then we have 30% for critical damage. That's from just the sets. Now let's go ahead and add in our triangles. And we'll start out with 5A, and then we can adjust to 6E as well. But when we talk about 5A, the triangle is going to have 5.88% additional offense, right? So now we're looking at 20.88. And if we look at crit damage gets a 36. right? So if we add 36% crit damage on here, we're at 66. So when you now compare offense with offense triangle versus crit damage with crit damage triangle, you'll see you only need 38% now in order to benefit more from crit damage than offense, right? So that's kind of the first thing we're looking at. Here's the really intriguing one, though. Let's assume that we're going to do crit damage as the one that we're comparing. But instead of adding an offense triangle, let's add a crit damage triangle. So if we add a crit damage triangle, notice that the crit chance now goes up to 88%. So now, in order to have more benefit from crit damage set versus an offense set, both of which are using a crit damage triangle, you need over 88% crit chance in order to make it more worthwhile. And, I mean, there are characters, I would still say Han Solo, for example, is a character that you definitely want to do crit damage on because he's going to be like over 100% crit chance in most cases. But in a lot of other scenarios now, you might be looking at trying to go for this offense set with crit damage triangle as your standard for increasing damage. So crit damage set has now lost a good amount of value because you need a really high crit chance. Now again, there are ways that you can get the crit chance, which is going to be like your crit chance buffs that you can get from characters like a Leia, like a Han, whatever it is. If you get a crit chance buff, or from like a leadership or a unique, you will find that the crit chance may be easier to get than some others, and crit damage may still have a good purpose. But in general now, offense seems to be the better set with crit damage as the triangle in order to optimize your damage. So with that, now let's go ahead and add our 6E instead of 5A. And so with 6E, your crit damage goes to 42%. So if we had 42% here and we had 42% here, so now if you're comparing 6Es, you're actually now at 93%. So you need a even higher crit chance in order to justify the 6E being crit damage versus the 5As being crit damage. And so that's what we're seeing now with regards to the new set. Now there are some things that can change this. So let's, for example, this is just looking at the triangle and the set. Let's go ahead and add 5.88% for, let's say, the square mod, and we'll add it to both, right? So we'll add 5.88% here, or 5.88% here, right? Now we're down to 84. Right, so you can see that it's slowly starting to come down a little bit as we're adding more offense just with the base, because the impact of the 15% is getting a little bit less. Let's say we add a offense arrow instead of a speed arrow, right? So now if we add an offense arrow on the offense side, we add a offense arrow on the crit damage comparison side, we're now down to 76%. Right, so now we've added offense in 2 of the primary slots that otherwise can. We can also add one, let's say, in the potency, in the cross slot. Right, so if we add another 5.88% there, and we add another 5.88% there, we're now down to 70%. So you can see how, as we're adding more and more offense in some of these other things, the crit chance is slowly coming down and down and down. And that's the more offense to these spots, the crit chance is coming down. And that's because the impact of the 15% is slowly becoming a little bit less, making the crit damage a little bit more valuable. And so, again, there's no... And I wish there was an easy way of saying, yeah, definitely go with one or the other or something like that. But with the case that you have right now, you're going to want to see what the overall impact is on your character as a whole. Because there's a lot of different things that go into whether or not you want to use crit damage, whether or not you want to use crit chance. And there's a lot of other stats here that we've also not introduced. Again, we've assumed that speed is the same, right? We've also assumed that the flat offense is the same. But all of these stats go into the overall calculation, and it can change what the overall impact is. So unless you're doing a character with really, really high crit chance, it looks like offense plus crit damage is the way to go, as kind of the blind rule. Forgetting about what the crit chance is and all of that, right? If you're looking at what can I do in order to make sure that I try and get the most damage out of it, you have a pretty good chance of it being offense plus crit damage. And you can see even now it's 70% crit chance that you need in order to kind of overcome that. Your base offense, so I'm going to change this 1,000, let's say, to 2,000. You'll see that some of the, you might be able to see it here as I do it, but let me zoom in here and you'll see. Look at just all of these numbers and then pay attention to what happens with the critical chance. So if I change the 2,000 to 4,000, let's say, the crit chance is still 70%. Let's change it to 10,000. Crit chance is still 70%. So the base offense of a character really makes no difference. You can see that from as I'm changing the number. The base offense will change some of the calculations, but by the time you get to the critical chance calculation as to what is the breaking point of the critical chance, it doesn't matter. What will matter are the other stats. So what I'll do is, I can go through some more examples here. I don't know what in particular you guys have questions about. I have my Excel sheet open, so we can definitely test different mods if that's what you want to do, and different mod sets to see what is the kind of the best layout for some of these. And we can definitely go through this a little bit more to kind of describe what the overall process is. So let me know what you guys have in terms of questions. This is kind of your VIP stream. Whatever you guys would like to look at, whatever you want in terms of an explanation, I can definitely help you kind of go through some of these. And so if you have any particular mod sets and you want to compare it on a character, we can put in those values and actually calculate it out. So what I can do right now, as you guys are watching, is so we have the crit chance here. And what I can do is actually make a formula line here where I will calculate out what your overall damage is. And based on what we're adding above. So we can do, it'll be this value times, and we'll do the critical chance. And then we'll add this value. Okay, and so we'll add that. Right now it's calculating it at 0, which makes sense because we don't have anything else. And here, we'll put this here, and this will also calculate it on the other side, except we'll need to change the critical chance here to this one. Okay, so we have this value, which is calculating this one, the BX times the crit chance, and then adding the other value. So we can do kind of a side-by-side comparison. Yeah, if you want to do that, Tim, we can definitely do that. If you want to put screenshots in the Discord, in the VIP chat with your loadouts, I can definitely do a comparison. So I'll look in the VIP chat if you guys want to post your loadouts and stuff and you want to do a comparison. We can look to see which one on average is going to do more damage. Now, one thing to keep in mind though is sometimes the speed is going to be based on percentages, right? Like you have a speed set or something. So we can, if you're going to put it on a particular character, I would need to know the speed of that character as well. So make sure that you include that as well as the loadouts, if the loadouts include any speed percentages. If you want to look at the speeds at all. If you don't care about the speeds, then I'll just leave the speeds the same, and we can just look at the average damage, because I can change the speed here to 1,000, and then you can get an idea about what the average damage is, rather than kind of the damage per speed unit, which is currently what it's looking at. So, okay. So I'm seeing 2 loadouts from Tim. So let's go ahead and add these into the spreadsheet. So we'll look at the first one. I'll put as 1. So we'll assume, again, the base offense doesn't matter. So I'll just leave it as 1,000 just to kind of make everything simple. Your increased offense percentage is 27.79. Your flat offense is 116. Your critical chance is 6.65. and I'm going to unblacken this so we can see it. Your critical damage is 36%, and we're just going to assume that the speed is going to be, well, you're adding 118 speed. What's your other set? Your other set is crit damage, so there's not adding any, so we can actually add the speeds because you don't have a percentage on this one, so that makes it a little bit easier. Okay, so your first set we have kind of listed here, and I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see it. Okay, so we put in your first set here, Tim. So 27.79% crit chance, or offense up, 116 offense, 6.65% extra crit chance, and 36% critical damage. Then we'll go over to your second set, and with this one, you have, again, so we're going to change some of these because these ones are set to be equal to the other side, so we'll manually change it, but this one is now 12.72% offense. You have no flat offense on this set. Your critical chance is 6.85. Your critical damage is 66%, and your speed is increasing by 132. And actually, so it's 132 on that plus your base speed. Do you know what your base speed on Chewy is, Tim? If you can get that, I'll adjust the speed to equal what it is. But even without that, we can go to the screen over here. And so if we do the comparison between the two, right, let me put this to the right, and then I can put the other one to the left, and then we can see it on the same screen. All right, so if we do the comparison, your second one, which is the one that's doing crit damage, is going to be more damage for you overall. So that would be what we're looking at here. And I think it's largely because of the speed. Now, if we make your speed, let's see if we make the speed the same. So we'll set this to 1,000. Let's kind of play around with this a little bit and see where you are with your sets. If we make the speed the same, yeah, you'll see that the damage is getting a little closer. But again, you're looking at one mod set compared to another, your overall crit chance and all of that. Now, okay, so your base speed is 137, right? So let's go ahead and put that in here. So we have 137 plus 118, and then on the other side, and if you could tell me also, Tim, what is your base crit chance on Chewy? So we can add that as well. So this one is going to be equal to 137 plus 132. So now we have that as a speed. And let's add your base crit chance as well so we can do a accurate comparison and see which one it is. Because this is kind of doing it just on the mod loadouts, but we kind of want to know what it's going to be on the character itself so we get the full scope of what the difference is going to be on the damage. Because we're missing probably about like 30, whatever the base is for Chewy on your character, which is probably close to like 30% or something like that. So we'll get that from Tim. Let me check VIP chat if there's any. Yeah. So if you guys want any more comparisons, just go ahead and put them in there. I see you put the second one on Han Solo. So it's whichever character you would like to put the set on, which one is the one that you want to do the comparison of. Because we do want to make sure we get a side-by-side comparison. Okay. So we're going to do this for Chewy. And we're going to assume 33.5. So if we do 33.5 plus 6.65, was it for the first one? Yeah, 6.65. Right, so this is the first percent. Let me put in the little percent sign here so it doesn't screw it up. There we go. And let me add some digits. There we go. Okay, so we have 40.15% on your first set. And your other one is going to be that equals 33.5% plus 6.85%. So we're adding 40.35%. And now when we do the comparison, you can see your first set is better on Chewy. because your Chewie is going to have more critical chance, or like just overall, he's going to have better damage output because of the speed. The speed is not low enough that it's negating it, but on average, his damage is going to be better with that speed set. Now, what we can do is, just for comparison, we can get rid of the speed, right? Let's get rid of speed as a comparison to see how big an impact the speed is. So if we make this, just again, 1,000, which gives you an idea about the average hit he's going to have, right? And we make this 1,000. We can go back, and when we do the comparison, you can see it's actually even a little bit higher on average that he's going to hit. And that's, again, assuming a base damage of 1,000, but that does not impact the overall calculations, because I can make this 10,000, and it's going to have kind of the same overall calculation. It poops bombs, that's correct. With the new way that the offense is set up, an offense set with a critical damage triangle is likely to do more damage than full critical damage unless you have over about 92, or we can even say 80% crit chance. And that depends on all your other stuff as well. Yeah, so for Chewie, this makes more sense. Now, we can reevaluate for Han as well. Now, some things to consider for Han, and I mentioned this before. Han also gets crit chance on his unique that doesn't show up in the calculations. He also can get the guard from Chewie, right? So that adds like another 25%. So right there's an additional like 45% crit chance. So Han is a character that can likely get more benefit out of the crit damage than Chewie, and Chewie gets more benefit from your offense set. So it kind of just works out that way, that it fits well, because your Han is going to have a high crit chance. Your Chewie is not going to be as high. And so, yeah, the way that you have your sets distributed right now seem to be perfect. That you're optimizing your damage with Chewie, and you're optimizing your damage with Han with each of those sets. Now, personally, I think your Han is a little bit too fast. I would focus more on offense with him. But that's entirely up to you. I would go much slower, a lot more offense, and just try to have him pop really, really hard every single time with crit damage set. Let me see if you guys, are there any other, if you guys have any other sets that you want to compare, again, post them in the VIP chat. If you want to post just screenshots of your loadouts and stuff, we can definitely do some more comparisons. But do you guys have any other questions? Does this all make sense with regards to, I'm not asking you necessarily to follow the math on all of this, but just kind of the final outcome. Offense plus crit damage triangle is going to serve you better as a generic rule. Again, as a generic rule, not customized for each character, but as a generic rule, it's going to work better than just full crit damage. There's no set percentage per se, because it depends also on whether you're 5A or 6E. But unless you're a really, really high crit chance, I would say above like 80, well, use the number on the screen just for the sake of argument here. Unless you're above 82% crit chance, you probably want to stick with offense set over crit damage, because it'll serve you better long run. But crit damage triangle is still the one that you want. So this is just talking more about the set bonus. Crit damage triangle has a much better benefit than the offense triangle. So offense triangle is going to be it's going to be limited towards things where you really aren't going to crit, right? Or if you're just focusing on offense for something like, let's say, phase 3 of the heroic Sith raid, where you're just trying to increase physical damage in order to get that maintained. Okay, so let's see what the next question is. So how would you go about putting a max damage set together? Prioritize offense percentage and offense. Well, again, it depends on the character. Each character is going to have a different set, right? Like their base crit damage, what team they're going to be in, what their overall their overall synergy is with the rest of the team. And so you're going to want to make sure that... I mean, do you have a character in mind, Poops Bomb? Let me start there. Because if you have a particular character in mind, we can look at that particular character and then start going through a little bit how we would try and optimize it, what team. Because we mentioned this a little bit on the lunch stream, which is what we want to do is not just have a generic rule. Most of us, especially if you're like, for example, I'm streaming this, so I'm trying to make sure I'm learning kind of the intricacies of it. But if you guys are watching YouTube videos and stuff, we're kind of at an advanced level to some extent. We're beyond just kind of putting mods on characters. We're also trying to optimize each of the teams. So there's a 3v3 team with for Grand Arena with those little things, or a 5v5 team, which is your typical one that you're using in Grand Arena for other 5v5 or territory wars. We want to try and create a synergy with the team. And so the synergy is going to require you to know what the team is, what are the different abilities associated with it, and what are the best ways to optimize the damage. And so that's why, like, Han and Chewie is the easiest example, because guard gives crit chance, and that throws everything into confusion if you just look at it. If you look at Han individually and not with Chewie, all your calculations are going to get thrown out the window. So I know you're saying non-crit chance abilities, but let's take an example. What team would you be looking at? And so we can look at the individual team and then have an idea about what we would want to do. So I'll wait for that here. Waiting. Okay, so I'm just checking on something here while I wait for your... I know there's a lag in the chat and stuff, so I'm waiting for your guys' response in the chat. And then, so you're saying Greedo and the Beast. So Boba leave for phase 3. Okay. Okay, so you're looking at kind of a second phase 3 heroic Sith team in order to get the Greedo pop, right? That's essentially what you're talking about. So you have a different potential concern with that team. And the different concern is that you are now looking at maximizing just crit chance with Greedo in order to get him to go on a chain. Because if your Greedo is too low on crit chance, then he's going to not go kind of on that crazy chain in order to knock down something. So, let's see. I'm trying to bring up the stuff here. Okay, yeah. So Boba, Greedo, Chewie, Death Trooper, and Bosk. So you're not using Han in a Chex Mix team at Poops Bombs? Because there's a different team that people often use with Greedo as kind of a second team, not their primary team, because you're using Chewie and Death Trooper with that team. I'm also assuming you don't have Revan. So those would be the other two kind of considerations to put into this. So, let's see. I'm trying to bring up the GG stuff for Greedo. So, so Greedo, when he gets his payout, right, he's going to have 50% health steal, that's fine, 25% crit damage, which is fine, and then 75% counter chance. His unique gives him 15% crit chance, so that's something we'll have to keep in mind. He does gain 15%, and then whenever he scores a critical hit, he has a 50% chance in order to attack again. And so he's going to be one of those characters that we're... Okay, he says no, and he hates changing mods, and he doesn't have Revan. Okay. Greedo, I would focus heavy on crit chance. Because you want to try and get him to 100% crit chance in order to get him going with his if at first you don't succeed ability, which is his unique, which just gets him to go over and over again. So with Greedo, he has 15% crit chance with his unique. He can give himself crit chance up for 2 turns, but that can also fade out fairly easily, right? He can gain 25% crit chance from guard if you make him the weakest, and chances are he will be the weakest on that team because the other characters are fairly tanky in comparison. So you should be able to get the guard on Greedo. So right now we have 15% from crit chance, we have 25% from guard, so now he's at 40%. And then if we look at Boba's leader also gives all bounty hunters 10% crit chance. So now we're at 50%. And so what we need to get Greedo to is 50% crit chance. Greedo's, I'm trying to see what his base, I'm going to look in my game really quick. Unless you know what yours is. What is the base crit chance on your Greedo? My Greedo's base crit chance is 35 or so percent. So really, he only needs about 15% crit chance in order to maximize his damage, right? He also, in that phase, is not reliant on speed, right? He is more reliant on being able to trigger his unique, so we don't have to worry about speed on him. So if you are trying to optimize your damage on Greedo with that team, for your Greedo, I would say you want a crit damage set because he's going to be near 100% crit chance, right? So crit damage is definitely going to be better than offense. You're going to want the crit damage triangle. You're also going to want, as his secondaries, as his 2-piece set, you're going to want crit chance, and that's because the crit chance will provide him another 8%, right? So we need to get 15%, and now we have another 8% done there. So there you go. So there's another 8%, so now we only need 7%, which means that on your 6 other mods, you're going to want a offense primary on your arrow. You're going to want an offense primary on your cross. You're going to want, obviously, and you can't change this, the offense on your square, right? So those ones you're looking for offense primaries. All of them you're going to look for flat offense secondary. And then all of them you're going to try. So combined, you need to get an additional about 7% crit chance. And so in total, when you look at your Greedo stats, you want Greedo with that team. And in particular, it's because of Chewie being on that team. If you're trying to maximize for that one team, because Chewie is on that team and you want to make sure that the guard ends up on Greedo, and it should because the other characters are tankier again. With guard, Greedo's going to get an additional 25% crit chance. Again, 10% from Boba's lead, 20% from his unique. Or not 20%. Yeah, it's 20%, right? Hold on. Let me just double check. Or 15%. 15%. 15, 25, and 10. Those are the numbers for Greedo. So all you need to do is when you look at your Greedo's stat page, does he have 50% crit chance? That's it. If you have 50% crit chance on Greedo, you are set for phase 3 crit chance. Everything else, you're going to look for crit damage set, 1 crit chance set, again, to get to that 50%. Flat offense secondary with preferably some crit chance secondaries. And if you have speed, that's fine. But Greedo is not reliant on his speed. He's reliant on counterattacking once you get his payout. So that's essentially what you're going to be doing in order to maximize Greedo. Now, I mean, that's assuming. So here's the other thing. When you put in Death Trooper, you are now doing kind of a off-brand Chex Mix type of team. And so what I mean by that is the typical Greedo team, because of the way that the payout works. So this is kind of it's kind of an interesting thing that you have to do with this particular team. And I'm sure you know it, but I'm just going to kind of describe it here. You need Greedo to get his payout. the payout for Boba is going to be killing the first enemy that takes a turn. The problem is that if you take this team in at 100%, nothing is going to have gone at first, and I'm pretty sure there's no contract listed because none of the enemies have gone first. And typically you're trying to get a lot of your stuff to go fast, right, in order to kind of beat out some of these sabers. And so you have to either make sure that they're all slower than the sabers so that you can knock out one of them, right? So there's that aspect where you want to kill one lightsaber, and it's the lightsaber that goes first. You have to make sure you kill that. You leave the other two alive, and then you death mark and you stand alone with Greedo. So Death Trooper has to be faster than your Greedo. The other ones need to be faster than your Death Trooper, and preferably it's going to be that all 5 characters are slower than the lightsabers, but faster than Traya, which I think makes it so you need a speed of just around, I think it is just around like one. The other 3, I think you need to make around like 185 or something like that. So that's why Greedo isn't typically done with the Chex Mix team, especially with Boba. Now, the typical way that Boba is run with Greedo in Phase 3 is that he is brought in after an initial attack that kills 2 lightsabers. And you basically will see who the next one to go is on either Traya or the lightsaber. If it's Traya, you bring in kind of a low-level character to die to Traya. If it's the saber, then you bring in your team. And now the one that you're going to kill is the lightsaber. You kill the lightsaber, Traya ends up toppled. And now you hope for this massive damage during the topple. Because you can topple, you can stand alone, and then just go nuts. So that's usually the team that you go with. You're also lowering your defense or your damage by introducing Bosk. Because you want attackers for the standalone. Bosk is a tank, and so he's not going to give you the additional offense. So there may be a better character that you want to put in that spot instead of Bosk. Potentially it's a attacker of some kind instead of Bosk if you're trying to optimize your damage with that particular team. And so if you're looking at that team, I'm trying to think who you can put in. You don't have any offense up, so I would still say Pow would work on that team if you want to put offense up on everyone. That'll increase Greedo's damage. You can do Jedi Knight Anakin, but that's going to be a little bit of RNG to it. But I think an offense up attacker would definitely help you a lot with that team. So I would replace Bosk with Pow. He does, but not to all of them. So keep in mind, when he does standalone, he is getting offense up from everyone. So you may be getting offense up on Boba, you may get offense up on Greedo, but you're not getting anything from Chewie, you're not getting anything from Death Trooper, and Bosk is a tank, which means you're essentially missing out on his entire standalone. So you're almost negating the entire purpose. Right, because Bosk is not an attacker, and standalone only gives offense from attackers. I think from tanks it gives health. I have to double check that, but I think it's health. Let me check standalone really quick here. Phase 3. Where's standalone? This standalone. Tanks 100% tenacity. So instead of gaining 100% offense from another attacker in that team, instead you're increasing offense by 50% on 2 bounty hunters and dropping 100% offense on Bosk. So you're kind of lowering your, and one of the offenses on Greedo, which is fine, but the offense up you're giving to Bosk has 0 impact because Bosk is a tank, and the only thing he's giving is tenacity. I know you don't want to necessarily level up Pow, which is fine. I would say Jedi Knight Anakin may be a little bit better. Yeah, the team is strong. There's an RNG component to it at Poop Spawns that's going to be Greedo, and obviously how many times he goes with his unique. So you can easily get the 5% and 6% with just a little bit of luck with Greedo going repeatedly, plus the death mark and all the counter attackings and stuff. So you can definitely get your 5 or 6%. This is more if you're trying to like maximize your damage in phase 3. Then you'll want to probably reconsider your Bosk and try to put in another character. I'll put it this way. Even if you didn't want to level up Pow, right? So Jedi Knight Anakin would probably be your best bet to make sure he's loaded up with crit chance, and so he can go and then do hopefully get offense up on everyone, right? So that would be probably your most optimal choice. There is an RNG aspect to it. Let's say that there's not RNG. You can look for other characters that give offense up to all characters, not just one, but give offense up to all characters that can potentially increase your damage as well. And one example, and I'm guessing you don't have him, but Poggle. Poggle's another character that gives offense up to everyone. He's not a great character, so most people don't have him leveled up unless you used him very early in one of the older droid metas. But Poggle is another character that does offense up, for example, to everyone. Because if you're going to sacrifice that 5th position, you want to make sure offense up is on all 4, so that you get 3 of them from standalone, plus the one that you put on Greedo. And the one on Greedo is probably going to fade by the time that you get through it, because standalone counts as a turn. Yeah, Tusken Shaman is another one too. So, I mean, there's a lot of different characters you can potentially use in that. But again, you're sacrificing a position that can give you an attacker with 100% offense if you're doing something like that. The only 2 attackers that I know of that do offense up again are Jedi Knight Anakin and Pow. So that's where they fit in. But if you use another one for offense up, you have to make sure it's for all characters. Otherwise, it's gonna... Yeah, C-3PO kind of changes everything. I know. C-3PO is definitely a whole different beast, a whole different monster altogether. He's added a whole different component to this game now. But yeah, I think you're there. I understand why you picked Bosk, and it works fine for now. I would just say try to go with somebody else. The other one also, by the way, the 100% tenacity is really nice to avoid, and I understand that. Here's the one of the other things too. Increased tenacity will prevent you from getting your ability blocks and that kind of stuff, right? And your dazes. But that's also negated by having Chewie on the team with Guard, because Guard prevents you from getting that. So it's kind of another reason why you don't potentially need Bosk on that. You could even, I don't know what other ones you have, you can potentially replace Chewie with another bounty hunter attacker that is modded heavy on offense as well if you want to keep Bosk. And then that bounty hunter will receive the offense up, and that'll give you 2 characters outside of Greedo that will get the bonus. And then Bosk, with his standalone, is going to give 100% tenacity to Greedo, which means you have a much better chance of resisting like the ability block, which isn't as important, but more important would be the stagger or the daze. So that could also potentially help you as well. All right. Are there any other questions? I'll wait a little bit for the chat and everything to catch up, because I know it's a little delay, but... So... Yeah, I'll go through whatever you guys are interested in. What else? It sounds like most of this, it covered it. Again, the rules for the crit damage thing is fairly simple. So we can definitely do that. What I will do, I don't know, I'll have to see how I can kind of... How much are you going to sell your spreadsheet for? So actually, what I can do is I'm gonna see if I can get this into a Google Sheet, and so that way, and I'll give you guys access to it in the VIP chat. And I have to make sure that I kind of lock the cells and everything so the formulas and stuff don't get destroyed. But we could set it up so that the base 1 and the base 2 stuff can be modified, and you guys can put in the data for your stuff and then check it out. So we can set up something like that. So give me some time here, because I'm after the 12-hour stream, I fell a little bit behind on the podcast too, so I'm going to try and catch up on the podcast. That's my first priority before the new year. So I'm going to get all the podcast caught up, and then I can put this up for you guys. It poofs spreadsheets. I love it. You know I'm a spreadsheet fanatic myself. I do love me some spreadsheets, and I love me some mods. If there's, and I know this was kind of one of the questions that was always coming up with some of the discussions, like crit damage versus offense, which is better, which is not, and stuff. So, if there are other things you would like me to review, or I mean Grande or Ranger or whoever, right? Let us know. We want to give you guys, especially the VIPs, kind of additional content, additional time to go over things that you guys would like us to review. And so anything that you want us to review, let us know and we'll put something together. Oh, trust me, I remodded everyone to Ipus Bombs. Well, not everyone. I'm about 50% through my roster, and I'm finding that I'm a little bit low on mods. So I've kind of stopped in order to slice before I kind of continue again. So trust me, I completely understand. Okay, so bottom line, again, you want to make sure that you focus on characters. But yes, the overall thing is offense set, crit damage triangle. That'll be your best bet for offense, for maximal damage output. Offense set, crit damage triangle. Those will be the two keys. Crit damage set has a little bit less use now with all of the changes, and it's going to be very specific to high crit chance characters. But again, it's only on the set. Crit damage triangle is still the key one. So when we say like save crit damage triangles, it's for stuff like this, where crit damage triangle is just superior. Oh, mods got very complicated now. Mods 2.0 has introduced a whole new like mini game inside of the game in order to optimize. It's nutty. So, yeah. There were definitely a lot of ifs and buts, because I'm always hesitant to give you guys a rule that I know has a lot of exceptions. Like if it was just a couple of characters, right? Like if it was just Han, for example, and Han was the only exception, then that would be easy. I would say always go offense set and crit damage triangle, right? But it's not the case. There's a lot of different things that play into it. And let's just go through some of the things we already discussed, right? Guard gives characters 25% crit chance, which makes it very easy for Chewie being on a team to throw that off entirely. Han, for example, has a unique that gives him crit chance, and he's not the only one. You can get crit chance for all of the Imperial Troopers, for example. Plus, if you add a Snowtrooper, right, Snowtrooper can get really high crit chance. You might want crit damage set on him instead of offense as well. A team with Leia. Leia is another character that can give crit chance up to everyone, which can throw off your calculations. Lots of leaders that give crit chance up now, including like Revan. Revan can give crit chance up to Jedi and stuff. So it's hard for me to come up with the steadfast rule. So I'll call it a general rule of thumb. If you're not sure, offense set plus crit damage triangle is your safest bet. That's your typical safest bet, regardless of your critical chance, right? If you're not going for pure optimization, your best bet for offense is going to be, or for damage, I should say, is offense set plus crit damage triangle. Crit damage triangle is pretty much guaranteed. There's very, very few scenarios where offense triangle beats crit damage triangle. And most of those are either like you're facing a Treya team with high crit avoidance, so you're not expecting to crit very much. You're also maybe trying to increase your standalone in phase 3. So all of those characters you're putting offense on. You have a character that may not crit, right? So if you have a character that doesn't crit a lot, like let's say Kylo Ren, for example, Kylo Ren may end up being one character. I still like crit damage on him because he has more than just that one ability with Lash Out where he can't crit, but mainly because of the outrage. But I'm saying if there's other abilities like that where you can't critically hit and it's just doing your overall damage, then that may be something to consider as well. But overall, very, very, very few where I would say crit damage is not better than offense. So I would say that one is a little bit more of a kind of a steadfast rule of thumb, which is crit damage triangle. Always go crit damage triangle, I would say, unless you know very situationally what you're going to change. In terms of your set, offense is typically safer, but depending on your team, crit damage still has worth. Crit chance is not something that's necessarily going to be the one that you're going to want like 6 pieces of. It can be your 2-piece, but it might also be wasted. So how worthwhile is the Crouching Rancor guide many of us use as a mod bot in Discord to provide info? Okay. So it serves a purpose. I'll put it that way. It serves a purpose. If you are not sure how to mod a character at all, Crouching Rancor does a good job because it does focus you on particular mods that help the character. Like, they're not off to the point where like they're going to ask you to put like defense on Han, right? It's still going to focus you towards the damage in order to up the damage of Han. And so the stuff like Crouching Rancor is still a good resource to have when you're basically going to do what I'm going to call lazy modding, which is you're not going to try and focus on a particular team for this character. You're just going to try and mod him. You have a bunch of mods. This is maybe like your 8th or 9th team on your list. So it's not your optimal team or whatever. You just want to make sure you have reasonable mods on it. Crouching Rancor makes it much easier because, let's just be honest, who wants to spend all of their time trying to optimally mod every single squad in their collection? Right? You'd be going through there's almost like 200 characters in the game now. You'd be going through 200 characters trying to figure out what team you're going to put it on and how to optimally mod them. And so that can definitely be very tedious and get to the point where you're going to like hurt yourself in frustration. So, Crouching Rancor becomes a very good resource for you to go through and be like, okay, I want to put, let's say I'm going to put simple enough, Wampa. Wampa's kind of a plug-and-play character. I can use him on a bunch of different teams. What's a good generic way for me to mod Wampa? And so Crouching Rancor serves that purpose. It'll give you a good idea on what to put on Crouching Rancor. The one that I'm liking more now is actually the GG meta, the mod meta report. Because the one that I'll typically go to is if I go and kind of just want to get an idea about how people are modding particular things, I don't look at Arena, because Arena tends to be more speed focused in general. But what you can do is what I go to is the top 100 guilds. Because those ones are going to have, the top 100 guilds tend to have a lot of Krakens, and the Krakens tend to have a lot of mods. And so they have more diversity with being able to actually create mod sets for particular characters. So what I'll typically do is go to the top 100 guild GP tab, not rank 1 arena, not 1 through 10, unless it's an arena character you're looking at. If you're looking at stuff for Grand Arena and Territory Wars, go to the top 100 guild GP and then look there, and it gives you what they're putting as their sets, what they're putting as the primaries. And that gives you a much better idea. And if you click on the character, it also gives you kind of the distribution. So sometimes you see something at the top because it's the most common, but as you kind of scroll through, you notice that there's a bunch of different mod sets that people are putting. Sometimes they're only putting one health set because they're putting a bunch of different other mods on it, or they're throwing a bunch of health sets. They're doing 3 health sets, or they have crit damage and health, or crit damage and crit chance. But you can see a lot of commonality when you go through that new mod meta report. So I would say the mod meta report is a little bit better when you're trying to get a little bit more focused, but then nothing can really beat kind of just going through and making sure you understand your team and modding yourself. So kind of from bottom to top, Crouching Rancor, mod meta report, and then just sitting down and doing it yourself would be kind of the top of the list. But each of those has their plus and minuses, with obviously the best one being that it just requires a lot of time to sit there and do it yourself. And nothing against Crouching Rancor. Crouching Rancor does pretty well. I don't always agree with it, but I tend to try to focus on particular things. So all right. I haven't used the mod optimizer. I have the stuff in order to test it, but I haven't had the chance to sit down and test it yet. So I've heard fairly good things about the mod optimizer, but it looks like there may be that one glitch it poops bombs. So good thing to let people know about. What else? What other questions do you have? And hi, Bimasu. I'm just checking some work emails while I'm here. What is the huh to? I'm confused. I think there's a setting on there, right? Yeah, I think there's a setting, what else, where you can change it for like less priority on speed, and like, because the optimizer gives you a bunch of different options onto what you want to focus on and stuff, and I think it lets you kind of select that. I think it does keep the speed as default, but it doesn't necessarily, I don't know if maybe you had to change it or something, but there should be an option to change it, I believe. Oh, gotcha. God, I'm still in work mode, so that completely went over my head. It really did. That's a shame on me. I should have known better. Is there anything else you would like me to discuss? Okay, so what else is saying? I have an offense set on Wampa with a crit damage triangle. That is a good thing, right? Okay, simple question for you. What else? What is your intended use of Wampa? Because if you are using it in PvE, then I would say the answer is no. Because Wampa, with his Furious Foe, is going to continually gain 40% crit chance. So he is very easily over whatever threshold makes offense worse than crit damage. So Wampa can actually benefit more from crit damage. Now, if you are using him in more PvP content, and you're saying that you're using him in Territory War and Grand Arena, if you're using him for that purpose, then I have to look a little bit closer, because you may not be able to hit the Furious Foe as quickly, which means that his crit chance is still going to be relatively low until you get to that point, and then he becomes better. But the first few rounds can definitely make a bigger impact, and so I'm okay with you doing offense. But if you're doing it for PvE purposes, then I would suggest go straight to crit damage. For me, there's no question, PvE content, you're going to get more than enough time for Furious Foe to get charged up and get him over 100% crit chance. Get him with crit damage. But for PvP stuff like Territory Wars and Grand Arena, I'm okay with offense set. It just depends on your overall composition. You're using him with Rex, so you're not really getting any particular crit chance per se on that team. You are getting some turn meter gain, which means that he should be able to hit his Furious Foe. You might be able to hit Furious Foe twice, which will make it all worthwhile. But yeah, I'm fine with offense on Wampa for that purposes. Yeah, if you're gonna change things around, what else? Then yes. Yeah, if you're willing to move mods around, then I would say do offense for Territory Wars and Grand Arena, and then for Heroic AAT, go crit damage, because that'll optimize your damage. Oh, not a problem, Maskanada. Yes, mod sets. It's actually one of the best parts of the level 50 characters, which is you can store mod sets on a different character that's like level 50, so you know exactly where your like other Wampa set is. Your other Wampa set can always be on your like Mob Enforcer or whatever the hell you have kind of at the bottom of your roster, and you can easily switch them back and forth. So Shay, easy. Crit damage triangle. Definitely crit damage triangle. There's very few scenarios where offense triangle is better. Grandmaster Yoda is not one of them. Crit damage triangle. Especially if you're using him under Revan. So offense triangles are going to be good for, so again, phase 3 of the Heroic Sith, when you're going to be doing a lot of that kind of stuff, is really nice. Because of the standalone and just grabbing physical damage. So that's one place where offense triangles are good. Another place offense triangles are good is going to be characters that do dots, because they're not critting, they're going to be doing a lot of extra damage. So Vader, I'm trying to think what the other dot characters are, but the dot characters can definitely be good. That's one of the reasons why Wampa, that's why I'm a little, if it's not for PvE, I was saying it's close, because the offense does help with that. Night Sisters, for example, potentially an offense triangle can be good on Talzin, because of all the damage that she's doing. You don't have to go with crit damage on Talzin. Offense works really well on Talzin. Trying to think what else. Yeah, I know. I just said what else. I just now I'm catching myself as I'm saying. God. Trying to think, what are the other good offense characters? I'm trying to go through my roster here a little bit just to give an idea. Let's see. I do like just offense. Right now you might have to go more protection and stuff, but because of her stacking offense, Traya can get pretty fun with just flat offense. When you're facing a bunch of other Traya teams, because of crit avoidance and all of that, sometimes crit damage. So that is another condition where if you know you're facing a lot of crit avoidance teams, Sith Trooper with crit avoidance arrow, Traya lead teams, like that kind of stuff, offense can be good with that. But again, it's a little bit more specialized in what you're doing. But I do like it on Traya, because she does do a lot of that kind of stuff. Let me see. Who else would I say offense for? I mean, really, those are the main ones that I'm thinking about. Hagar is the exact same thing, except you're looking at your special damage instead of your physical damage. So when I put base offense there, but really on the spreadsheet I put base offense. But really, this is either your special damage or your physical damage is what you're putting in this stat box. Yeah, Bimasu, that's a good one. EP because of the shock. You can definitely do EP with shock as one of them. Potentially Fallen Bastila then in the kind of the same vein if you want. I mean, offense triangles in general. Yeah, so if you are doing stuff with the Culling Blade, Bimasu, yes. But if you are focusing more on just like dot damage, then you can go with offense. It just depends on how you play it. Sometimes for Heroic Sith Raid, I think, what do I have on my Vader? I had offense on my Vader. Yeah, I still have offense on my Vader. I solo starting halfway through Phase 2 on Heroic AAT. I haven't started the C-3PO solo yet. But in halfway through Phase 2 on the Heroic AAT, I used the Vader, the Wampanator team in order to solo it. And I just like the ticks of damage that just continually stick on it because Vader's dots don't go away as long as he's alive. So it goes well. What are the new number letter boxes under mods on GG? Are you talking about the ones that say like 15E and stuff? Like 15D, 15E, all that kind of stuff? Is that what you're talking about, Shay? If that's what you're talking about, it's fairly simple. So, if that's what you're talking about, the letter numbers, the first one is the level of the mod. So you can go from 1 to 15. So if you see a 15, that means it's level 15. The letter tells you whether it's a gray, which is E, a green, which is G, a blue, which is C, a purple, which is B, and a gold, which is A. So E, D, C, B, A. Gray, green, blue, purple, gold. And then the color of the mod plus the dots will tell you what the dot is. So if your mod is kind of golden in the outside, not the ring around the symbol. So there's a symbol for the set, right? And there's kind of like a border around it for the shape inside of the mod. That's what corresponds to the A, B, C, D, E. The color of the mod itself, like it almost looks like a little chip. So the color of the chip is what tells you whether or not it's 5 dot or 6 dot or anything below. 5 and below all have the same kind of grayish color, like the silverish color. That's all for 5 and below. 6 turns it gold, but you can also see that with the dots as well. But that's what the letter numbers are. It's the level of the mod and the quality, which it tells you it's either gray, which is E, green, D, blue, which is C, purple, B, gold, A. I think I said green G earlier. There's no G mod. Yeah, one of the teams, for example, Bimasu, that I use the offense on too, which I had fun with in the 3v3 arena actually, was against Night Sisters, because the dots stay on the zombie. And so the dots keep on ticking for ridiculous amounts of damage. Like the Culling Blade, when I use it on Zombie, it really doesn't matter. Zombie's dying anyways. But she comes back with her dots and everything on it. So like her next turn, she basically just passes away immediately. So that's why I focus on offense for Vader. It's just the way I use it. You can definitely do crit damage, though, in order for the Culling Blade to do more. But to what you're... Just going back really quick to what you were saying, Hagar... You want to make sure you're looking at your special crit chance as well as your special offense, and you can use kind of the same calculations. The numbers just tend to be a little bit lower, but crit damage triangle is still the way that you want to go. The damage output just ends up being a lot more. It was fun, Bimasu. I'm trying to think what else. Ooh, again, I said it. I'm trying to think what other character would benefit from just straight offense. Because there aren't a lot from the offense triangle. It really is kind of restricted in terms of which characters really benefit from it. Phase 3 has added a little bit of use to that, so if you run multiple Phase 3 teams in Heroic Sith, or just Sith Raid in general, you'll find more benefit from it, but what other character can benefit from offense? Oh, potentially Talia. That's another one I was trying to think of. Talia, because Talia on her basic does a heal based on however much damage she does. And sometimes you just need a consistency in damage. Now, I still would go with crit damage, but I've seen people effectively use the offense triangle on Talia as well for a very consistent high damage heal for all of the Night Sisters for Phase 4. So Talia is another one that I would say offense isn't necessarily the worst thing you could do. Especially since her crit chance isn't necessarily high, and the Night Sisters don't provide a lot of bonus to crit chance. So Talia could be another potential there. Crit damage still probably a little bit better, but because you need consistency of heals a little bit, especially if you're going to be trying to go for the high end and like stacking like 20, 30, even sometimes even up to 40 of the bonds in Phase 4, the consistency of healing helps. And Tim, you can go offense with Grandmaster Yoda. I would still go crit damage, especially if you're doing Revan. Because Revan does provide crit chance, and Yoda does crazy amounts of damage if you can get his... if he crits, he'll one-shot things with that crit damage triangle. You can go offense set on him. I'm still saying offense set is probably better on Yoda because special damage in general just has a lower crit chance. You just get some crit chance bonus, but again, I don't think it's high enough to compensate for it. So I would still go offense set on Grandmaster Yoda, but then crit damage triangle would still be the triangle that I go. I'm running the Bastila team, so mine is still modded more for speed and everything. So I'm still going crit damage set right now on Yoda, but he's going to be one that I'm probably going to switch around mods on soon. Especially now that I recalculated all this stuff. Because it used to be the 40%. That's no longer the case now. Offense is still very heavy. Offense mods have a new life. Any other questions? Checking chat. A couple. I'll give it like another minute here just to make sure the chat is caught up and everything. But it looks like you guys have all of your questions answered here, so that's definitely good. All right. If you guys have any other questions, you know that we're available on the VIP Discord, so you guys can tag us into the, not the VIP Discord, but the VIP channel in the Discord. So you guys can definitely tag us there. And, yeah, I want to try and do some more of this in the new year as well. Once a month, maybe have a special VIP video with you guys to go over whatever it is. It seems like mods is one of the things that we focus on a lot more than some of the other channels, and so we'll definitely provide you guys with more mod information and stuff. So if there's something in particular you would want us to go over, let us know in the VIP chat, and then we can set that up as maybe like a monthly VIP exclusive stream for you guys. And we can maybe try to do some stuff differently for each of you guys. I'm glad, Shay. I do like me some math. And I will try and figure out how to get this spreadsheet kind of available to you guys. So it'll be a VIP kind of tool where you guys can plug in the numbers and then figure out what you need. And if there's anything else you want like kind of calculated in this, then we can definitely include that as well. Okay. Bimasu, I like crunchy. There's a certain, so it's not just crunchy because I like peanut butter, but I like it better with jelly and with grape jelly. Just the crunchiness of the peanut butter, the smoothness of the grape jelly, that's my favorite. Crunchy peanut butter, grape jelly. Okay. So, with that, I will go ahead and sign out. This video is available to you guys whenever you want. If you have any other questions and stuff, if you guys want to go back and watch it, I'll keep this available. I may try to clip some of this and make it just like a much shorter video and obviously less interactive as something we just put as a standalone video. But you guys kind of get the first glimpse plus all of your questions and stuff answered, and so it definitely not be as much detail as the one that's going to go public. So this is going to be more detailed than the one going public. So with that, everyone have a great day. Have a great new year. If we don't talk to you before that, we should have Jedi Academy tomorrow. But just in case you guys aren't able to attend or we're not able to speak, everyone have a great holiday and also a great new year. And we hope to make 2019 enjoyable for you guys as well. So thank you all for your support, and I'll talk to you next time.